Hi, I'm Romilly from Stitching with a Shimmy and Golden Circle Designs, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to work a corded Brussels stitch, which is a variation on detached buttonhole stitch, around a wire frame for a leaf. It's going to be a fantasy leaf because I'm using purple thread. I wanted the thread to be large enough and easy enough to see. The only time you're going to go through the fabric is at the very beginning, and you're going to start with an away waist knot, which is just a knot away from where you're starting. Bring it down through the fabric and up next to the wire, about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch away from the tip of the leaf. We're going to start at the tip of the leaf and work our way down, filling the leaf up as we go, and then at the end we'll work a buttonhole around the edge to cover up the wire. What you're going to do, covering up the wire, will also secure this thread. Use as long a piece of thread as you can get away with without it tangling. I'm usually about a yard is about as much as I can handle. Wrap it around the wire a couple times. Again, do not go through the fabric. I'm using a blunt tapestry needle, relatively large for this thread, which is a number 5 pearl cotton. And what we'll do, at the very tip of the leaf, there's a couching thread right at the corner. Work a buttonhole stitch around the wire on the side away from the couching thread that you're working. If you're left-handed, you may be doing this the opposite direction, and that's fine. If there's demand, I may demonstrate that. So there's your first buttonhole stitch right there at the top of the leaf. And you're going to run one more through around the wire on the side. What this does is it secures it. Now I take one more to move it down a row. This comes out closely to the first one, to the last one actually, and just brings it, then you bring your thread straight back across. This is the cord in the corded Brussels stitch. My words aren't working today. Again, under the wire. We're going under the wire so that it stays. Now, on the second row, the leaf is a little bit wider here, so we're going to take 2 buttonhole stitches. Through that first buttonhole stitch, under the cord, and over your working thread, which makes your next buttonhole stitch. Now, there's one more here, so we're going to go through there as well. Oops. Taking care not to wrap your thread around the wires that are sticking out at the bottom of your leaf. So now you've got 1 stitch, 2 stitches, and through around your wire. Oops. Pulling closer brings you a 3rd stitch. Now to move it down to the next row, 1 more around the wire. And then the cord comes back across and under. Now I'm wrapping the cord around not only the wire on this side, but also the thread that we want to stay secure. It just gives it one more layer. So our first one, sometimes it's hard to see them if you pull them too tight, or tight as you want them. So under the buttonhole, through the buttonhole stitch, under the cord, and over the working thread, which makes your first stitch. And then you've got another buttonhole stitch here, over your buttonhole stitch, into your buttonhole stitch, under your cord, over your working thread, and pull. Now you'll want to play around with it because depending on how loose you make your stitches will give you a different look to your leaf. They can be open and lacy, they can be tight. This is also known as cloth stitch, and it makes quite a, because of the cord, it makes quite a tight leaf look rather than a lacy one. And under the wire for your last stitch. Then we'll move down one more row. And across, under the wire. Or more accurately, around the wire. Buttonhole stitch, cord, over the working thread. Sometimes that first stitch can be a little tricky because you want to keep that cord pulled relatively tight. Next buttonhole stitch. Now as the leaf gets wider, we're adding a buttonhole stitch at the ends. When the leaf starts getting narrower, we'll start taking those out. So there's another buttonhole stitch and then one around the wire. At this point, the leaf is pretty steady and my wire is covered with fabric. Because it's a wrapped wire, it will hold the thread better than a plain silver wire. So as you get going, you can dispense with that extra wrap and just continue down. You see that? Through there and over the working thread. And pulling this so that the cord is straight. And there it goes. And that is corded buttonhole stitch. Corded detached buttonhole stitch, corded Brussels stitch, if you're talking just in lace making circles. Oops, and that one extra. Now we're adding our stitches on the outside of the thread of the leaf. We'll shrink the leaf. Sometimes you need to pull it down to balance the... As we shrink down here, we'll take stitches out again around the outside so that the center of the leaf stays pretty even. Oops. Sometimes your couching thread can get in the way. That's going to keep the cord from laying where it needs to lay, so it needs to go above it in that corner. Now we're going to add a stitch there, pulling that tight. Oops. And the next stitch. And you just continue that way until the whole leaf is full. And we'll be back later to show you how to go around the outside edge.